Here's what's coming today on the Woodworking Network podcast.
Once I finally started figuring out how to get myself out of the way and not micromanage everything and run the actual business, not the shop floor, that's when things just really started clicking.
Welcome to this episode of the Woodworking Network podcast. Join us as we explore the business of woodworking, big and small, and what it takes to succeed. I'm Will Sampson. Today's episode is sponsored by WoodPro Expo, California. We'll be talking about better ways to run your business without it running you, with Jeff Finney, a veteran woodworking business owner and the author of a new book. But first, I want to talk about business-life balance. I talk a lot about business efficiency and productivity, but how to be more profitable and grow your business. But with all the emphasis on bigger, faster, and more profitable, there's something that can too easily get lost in the mix. That's your life. The evidence is everywhere. Successful celebrity entrepreneurs brag about sleeping only 4 hours a night and working 80 hours a week. Is that the path to prosperity? When I talk to woodworking manufacturers, I frequently ask them, how many hours a week do they work? Often they don't answer and just laugh at me. Sometimes they honestly have no idea because they are afraid to count. When they do add it up to give me a number, it's typically way north of 40 hours and a 5-day work week. Is that the only way to get things done? Part of the problem is that many small business owners just don't plan for their own time off. They're so busy wearing all the hats in the business that they just keep piling up the work. When I explain things in workshops like how to calculate a loaded hourly shop rate, it's fascinating how many don't account for vacations, sick days, or even 5-day work weeks. It's just not sustainable to be working at your business 24/7, 365. So what can you do? Well, you can't do it all, that's for sure. But small business owners everywhere are famously bad at delegating. So many decide to be self-employed because they wanted to be the boss, but they haven't learned to stop being the worker bee too. Of course, the current shortage of skilled workers doesn't help the situation. How can you turn over parts of your work to other people if you can't find those people? No easy answer there, but a bigger emphasis on growing a team instead of just hiring hands is probably a start. There's also the matter of compensation. I talk a lot about pricing work based on customer perceived value. As a business owner, you need to apply some of that same thinking to your staff. What's really in it for them? Is it just the paycheck? Is there other motivation? Is there growth potential? Are you attracting the kind of people who want to grow with a team in the first place? Or are you just bringing on warm bodies? Those are all tough questions. But you need to ask some even tougher questions of yourself. What is really your business goal? Are you trying to create value and wealth that makes you and your family comfortable? What fulfills you beyond the business? What would you do if you weren't running your business? What helps recharge your batteries? No business owner, no matter how talented and energetic, can do it all the time. Even if you build your business that way, you'll likely find your marriage and home life suffering. Creating value in your business without creating value in the rest of your life is not a good equation. It just doesn't balance. Before we get to our interview with Jeff Finney, let's pause for a word from our sponsor. It's really easy for woodworkers to stay stuck inside, focused on their shops and production. But over the last couple of years, the pandemic has forced them to be even more isolated than usual. Now it's time to get out of the shop and resume life in the outside world, especially when it's a chance to network with your woodworking business peers. That opportunity is coming April 27th to 29th in sunny San Diego, as the WoodPro Expo joins with the Closets Conference and Expo to offer an unparalleled opportunity to boost your business with intelligence on techniques, tools, and technology. Let's get face to face again. Learn more at woodworkingnetwork.com/events/wood-pro-expo. See you there. Now let's talk with Jeff Finney. Today, my guest is Jeff Finney, owner and CEO of Ultimate Cabinets and The Push Through LLC. Jeff has been a woodworking manufacturer for 15 years and was a Woodworking Network 40 Under 40 honoree. He's written a number of articles about good business practices and has his own podcast. And now he has a new book out. Welcome to the Woodworking Network podcast, Jeff.
Hey, thanks for having me, Will. I sure appreciate it. Good to talk to you again, too.
Yeah. No, I've always enjoyed chatting with you about business issues. I think we both have some of the same ideas about particularly the woodworking industry, where not that many folks have formal business training, and it's kind of frustrating seeing them struggle.
That's right. Well, and I was right there with them, and still am to some extent. You're just always learning.
Yeah. Before we talk about your book, I'd like to hear a little bit about your business experience. How did you get started in woodworking?
Well, it was kind of by accident. So, I graduated college in 2001 from Oklahoma State, and with a construction management degree, and worked in the construction industry for a few years. Started building kind of furniture on the side, just for fun, in my garage. Had a buddy from college that asked me to build his cabinets for his new house, and he wasn't in a hurry. So I reluctantly took that job and got those done. And then it just kind of grew from there. He had a builder that was mentoring him through his house. And so I started building his cabinets, and just as it goes, it just kept growing from there, and finally quit my job and went out full time. So that's kind of how I got into the industry. And that was started my business back in 2005. So that's kind of the, started from the garage and grew our way just into, we've been in several shops, and now we've finally got kind of what I hope is our permanent home, in 40,000 square feet or so, and still got a little room to grow into it. So we just, it's been quite a ride, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, it's a little different to have what do you have, like 60 employees now or something like that?
We're right around 50. It kind of depends on the week, but a little over, a little under 50. So somewhere right in that area.
So what enabled you to grow to that size in such a relatively short period of time?
Well, there were several factors. So, we hovered around probably 10 employees for a long time. We rolled into 2009 and 10 with about 10 employees. And that's when the recession hit Oklahoma pretty hard. I know the coasts were more 07, 08, but with us, it was 2009 and 10 was our bad year, where it really caught us. And that chopped us in half, like it did many others. We got down to just a few employees. And then by the end of 10, there was actually just two of us back in the business. So it was almost like starting over. And then we started building back differently, just started building back more of a business rather than just a hobby. And we quickly grew from back to 10 employees. And then from there, we just, once I finally started figuring out how to get myself out of the way and not micromanage everything and run the actual business, not the shop floor, that's when things just really started clicking. And ever since then, it's just been a pretty continuous growth, since then.
I've frequently said that I think most woodworking business owners reach a turning point when they get to about 4 employees.
Yeah.
They realize that they can't effectively manage everything themselves. They either need to hire a foreman to run the shop so they can run the office, or they need to hire a business manager to run the office so that the owner can stay in the shop. But
right.
Some never successfully get past that point. How do business owners learn to delegate?
It's tough. So, delegating in and of itself, just talking about it is easy. So I can say, I no longer want to run the table saw, for instance. I'm going to let Jack do that, or whoever, run that table saw. Well, what ends up happening is that activity comes back to you because there's no standard procedures in place to dictate how you as the owner want that table saw or that activity ran, right? So, and that was exact example for me. I used to run the table saw before we got CNC machine. I ran it pretty much for the first 3 years of my business. So every day I'd wake up and I'd rip the sheets for that day, and then I would go do my other activities. And one day I finally woke up. I was like, you know what? I'm done with table saw. I'm going to give it to somebody else. Well, I did that. It worked great for about a week or two. And then before you knew it, I was back on the table saw. And I think that initial failure can really deflate a lot of business owners. Like, to heck with it. I'm just going to run it myself because I can do it better. And that may be the case, but if you take a little bit of time, you write some very simple procedures that just shows the finished product, hit the high points, the bullet points about how to do this. You don't need to tell your employee how to turn the table saw on, but you can tell them how to size a part correctly. So they can figure out the in-between points. You just need to give them the highlights about what you want. And the great thing about having those procedures is it makes it to where it's not people dependent, it's process dependent. And that's everything in woodworking is processes. And we need to standardize those to where us as owners are making sure we're getting the quality product out the door without us having to touch every piece of it along the way.
Well, I think in developing good processes too, you are forced to analyze your business and see what really is the best way to do things too. That it's kind of like the point of a business plan isn't really to do it to get funding or to whatever. It's to really analyze your business and force you to ask questions of yourself.
That's right. And on that note, if a business owner, excuse me, if a business owner would take the time that I wish I would have found this out early on in my business, but the importance of a vision, it sounds a little corny, but the importance of a vision just can't be understated. If you have a vision for your company, a very powerful vision that you can never reach, something way out in the distance, then it's something that you're always striving for. But the biggest thing is it keeps you on a path. It's kind of like a lighthouse. You have a direction, you have something to go towards, but you're never going to reach it. It answers all your questions in business. It's, should I take this job? Should I take this contract? Should I add this employee? Should I branch out and buy this company? Whatever it is, it steers your company, and it's a simple yes, no question. If this contract doesn't match our vision, then we don't look at that contract anymore. And my problem as a young business owner was I was a yes man. I said yes to everything. It didn't even have to be cabinets. It could have been framing a shed in a backyard. As long as it had volume to my top line in those first few years, my answer was yes. And I really think that held my company back several years by doing that. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies, they don't understand the opportunity cost of taking on work that may not take you where you need to go, or may cost you too much, or isn't the kind of work you ought to be doing, or that you're equipped to handle, all those kinds of things. And then you take that work and you don't have the time because you filled up the schedule to take the good jobs.
The good stuff. Yeah, that's right. So all of a sudden you're putting off the stuff that you need to be doing. And if I would have known that little tidbit there whenever I first started, to just have the discipline to say no to the things that didn't fit me. And you don't have to push customers away and lose a referral, but you can do it in a way that's like, maybe you refer somebody that's better at that than you are as a company. And then ultimately they end up referring you some work that's good for you or something. But I think if people would really take that to heart and say no to probably a lot of stuff that comes their way, man, your growth trajectory will just take off.
Now, your new book has a provocative title. That's it, I'm fired. How owner-operators can manufacture their product success and freedom. That's a great title. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but it sounds like you're trying to help owners be more successful without the crazy stress that so many self-employed entrepreneurs seem to live with.
That's right. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. Just trying to pay it forward. Several years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, I was at this spot in the company where we kind of planed out. I could add a little bit more sales, but then the next year they'd come right back down. It was just this bumping back and forth. And I figured out that I was maxed out where we was at. I was at this threshold. And the threshold was I had too many hats, and I was the one that was holding the company up. So I started by hiring an executive business coach, a guy, his name is Martin Holland. He's out of Norman, Oklahoma, in fact, and he coaches people all over the U.S. He's a great friend. I still use his, we still talk weekly, every Tuesday at 9:00 a.m. That's our time, and we just talk business. And it's great to have somebody in your corner, but will also hold you accountable, because a lot of times as a business owner, we don't have that in our company. We can't a lot of times talk to our employees about the inner workings of the business because they don't understand or want to know, so that was part one. And then through that process, I've just learned how to, and with his help as well, I've learned how to kind of fire myself from these activities that are ultimately holding the company back, and just little bit by little bit, I've got to this point where, I've been able to actually get a little bit of freedom out of the deal. And I've also added value to my business to where it's more than just me. It's more valuable beyond just its assets at that point, and there was a couple of drivers for that. And I'll tell you one major event that happened, about the same time that I got a coach. I had a friend that ran a cabinet shop here locally. Great guy, a fantastic cabinet maker. Their company had been in business forever, and he got to the point of his retirement and he was ready to move on. He did not have any luck selling his business, so he auctioned everything off. And it was a smaller shop, and at the end of the day, he walks away with $20,000 or $30,000 or whatever it is, after putting years of his life into this thing. And it was really tough to watch because I could see him just melting, during this auction. And he didn't make a lot of money at the end, so he ended up kind of having to go back to work for a few more years. He's doing fine. He's doing great today, but it wasn't what he wanted. It wasn't what he pictured at the end of his career. He's like, I wasn't putting my years into this to end up with that. And that to me really flipped a switch in my head, to make sure that doesn't happen to our company.
Yeah, I think that's a really important message to get across. We've had several guests on the podcast here to have talked about creating value in your business that goes beyond the owner. I remember talking to the famous furniture artist Wendell Castle years ago, where he realized that he had created this huge legacy, but it was all tied to his name, and
yeah.
There was nothing that he could separate from, and nothing he could sell or liquidate at the end of a career if he wanted to. And he ended up creating another company that the intent was to create value in the product and in a brand rather than his own name.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think one question an owner or operator can ask themselves is, what's the value of my business without me in it? So give yourself, realistically ask yourself that question and pull yourself out of your company. And if the answer to that question is it's the value of my assets, then you've probably got work to do. And just because your company has value and just because your company is sellable doesn't necessarily mean that you have to sell your company. That's not what it means. It just means that it's got value to where if you're in the position to where you have to sell your company or something happens to you that puts you in a position to have to sell your company, it's got value beyond just the tools and the building that it sits in.
One thing I think that's a good way to look at it is what would it cost to replace you, to hire somebody to replace you? And if there isn't enough value in your business to pay for that person, then your business isn't really got any value at all.
That's right.
So
that's right. I agree with that.
It's a tough thing to get across, especially for somebody who's been trying to do everything themselves.
Yeah. Well, and me, I got a little bit of a cattle prod on that, a few years back when I got diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's about 4 years ago. And it's something I don't mind talking about. It's something that drives me, and it's something that pushes me towards my end goal, because I've got that thing out in the future that eventually will make work very difficult. It's going to make it hard for me to go to work every day at some point in the future. So for me, it kind of put that timestamp on there of like, hey, you don't have a choice. You got to get this done. And that's probably kicked me into kind of hyper gear of getting it done. That's probably what's fueled some of our, not probably, that's what's fueled a lot of our recent growth in the last couple of years, really taken off, because I've kind of had to push the accelerator pedal on that. But that's also what drove the book, because I kind of realized, hey, I've got something here. There's something here that most people don't know and don't understand, and people need to know this. And that's the enjoyment of the book for me. It has nothing to do with money. It's more of just like sharing my story, trying to give a quick read for a tactical guide that an owner can use to get the business that they want, because we all go into business wanting this idyllic version of a business, where we've got the freedom and we've got, we're making decent money, and, we've got all these things, but, it usually ends up being some different avenue or some different road that actually happens, where it's more of like a slavery setup, Yeah,
the business runs you instead of you running the business.
That's right. That's right.
These days, I've heard some owners say, though, that they can't delegate because they can't find the people to hire that they can trust to delegate. What's your solution to that challenge?
There's no doubt that's tough, especially in our industry. We're in an industry that there's other industries that probably pay more than ours, like a lot of metal type working and that kind of thing, millworking or milling industries, they may pay a little bit more than woodworking industry. But with us, we found that we spend a little more time hiring. Our mantra when we're hiring somebody is, it doesn't matter what the position is, we want the best one there is available. So if we're hiring a person to sand our frames or sand our hardwood or something, we want the best person for that job possible, because we want to grow that person into something else. And to do that, we've kind of come up with this system, and I don't know if this is the trick or what, but it's worked well for us. When we hire somebody, we usually hire 2 people for that same position, unless it's an office type administrative position. But if it's a shop floor type position, we generally hire 2 people, and we kind of put a working interview together. So it's usually a 3 to 4 day process for each person. And a lot of times it works out where one person's not interested by the time we get around to them. So we only have one person. You know how this goes. Well, they'll say they're going to show up, and that's your answer. They're not going to be a good employee. But generally speaking, out of that process, we'll get one good employee out of that, and we'll let them work on a daily basis. So it's like they work day 1 with the team that they're going to work with, and then their team leader fills out a very simple, like 3-question form. They turn it into the office, and the last answer is, do you want this employee to return tomorrow? And they either circle yes or no. And the reason for that is us in the office, as either an owner or whoever does your hiring, your HR person, they're going to get the best version of that person, when they're interviewing them. And it's understandable. We all do that, and that's fine. You need to have that side too when you're interviewing them, but you also need the side that the people that are going to work with this individual every day, they need to see this person, because not everybody's a mesh. And we've had it work out before where an employee left us that we thought was going to be a good fit, because they ultimately didn't like the job. They was like, this isn't for me, but they had an easy way out, because they know at the end of the day, they're going to get a check. So literally every day we pay them like a contract laborer. We just pay them with a check as they leave, and ask them to come back tomorrow if that's the answer. And we do that for the first 3 or 4 days. And then we ultimately either hire them or pass, and then if it is pass, that's what it is. And then we move on and we try again. And I don't know if that's right. I don't know if that's wrong, but I know for us, it works. And we have a really low turnover. We pay higher wages than the majority of the shops in our area, which is Tulsa, Oklahoma. We pay higher than most shops. So we tend to, when we put out a job offering, we tend to get better applicants from day 1. And I'm pretty convinced that it's because that we pay more and the environment that we've created through our interview process.
I've been talking to a shop in New Hampshire that I want to do a story on, that has a interesting thing that kind of spins in the direction that you were just talking about, where they actually have the whole company organized as teams, and the teams actually hire their own members.
Right.
There isn't, a HR or front office situation involved at all. And it apparently has worked really well for many years for this company. Not the
Interesting.
thing that every company could do, but it does focus on what you're talking about of the people ultimately have to work with other people. And
Yeah,
if those other people don't get along with them, and it's chances are those other people know what needs to be done too.
that's
Uh,
right. Let the employees that you have make that decision, because you're making decisions for those employees, and a lot of times you may lose a good employee because you've hired one that doesn't fit or click with that team group or that activity.
yep, no, that makes a lot of sense. Out of curiosity, how many hours a week do you spend working at your business? And what are some of your tips for maintaining work-life balance?
Well, I still have weeks where I generally speaking, if I was to guess how many hours I work a week, it would probably be in the 30s. I still enjoy going to work. I'm still passionate about it. I still enjoy it. I a few years ago, I used to work, enough hours that I didn't want to count them because I was afraid I was going to figure out my wage, and that was a few years ago. But just like now, if I try to take Fridays off, I try to leave early on Thursdays. I make sure that I'm always off for my kids' stuff, during the evenings and all that. But um, I would say that in general, I probably work in the 30-hour range a week, and sometimes more, sometimes less, but generally somewhere around there. So, and that's taken a few years to get to that point. But really, where I'm at now is I've got the flexibility that if I need or want to take off a week or 2 weeks or whatever. Last year, I decided I was going to really test my theory on seeing how well I had done at firing myself. So I took a month off and we went on a big road tour around to California and visited some other shops and friends and just made a big grand tour with the family. And it was a great time and really tested it. And I found some holes in my theory that I had to patch up over the next few months, but it definitely showed some things that I was weak on. So it wasn't perfect, but I continually test my theory and see if it's working.
That's it for today. We'll have more from Jeff Finney coming up in our next podcast. But if you're looking for more of our podcasts, you can find all of them at woodworkingnetwork.com/podcasts and in popular podcast channels. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Thanks again to today's sponsor, Wood Pro Expo. If you have a comment or a topic you'd like us to explore, contact me at will.sampson@woodworkingnetwork.com. Thanks for listening.